Hello, big beautiful world. Welcome to another insane adventure here in Flight Sim Land. Today we're taking up the Q200, the Rutan Quickie, or Q200, Q2. We are going to take this beastie up. We are flying out of an airport north of the city of Namur in Belgium. Now I'm a francophile, not a francophone. So to all you native French speakers, forgive me if I maul the beautiful language of yours. Okay, so yeah, I don't review the textures and stuff, or I don't think I'm in a position to really review much of anything. I tend to do these things on an enjoyment factor. So let's get this puppy started before I rabbit on too long, and we'll swing it from there. But there's a reason we're taking off out of here now. I believe, oh yeah, no, do we want that on? We want that on. It's our fuel, I think. Yeah, cool. Actually, we should give them more juice, shouldn't we? Just in case. Yeah, okay, cool. 1 centiliter. I'm not even sure where the fuel swap over is for this beastie. Let's have a look. Pump, would that be it? Okay, yeah, cool. I'm guessing that's going to be our critter. Okay, so we've got juice, we've got mixture, crack the throttle, got the pump on, got avionics. We are looking good. Let us do it and say we did.
Clear prop.
Uh-huh. You gonna catch? Yes, you are. You are. Beautiful. All right. We have donk. We have engine, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Without further ado, it's a bit quiet, isn't it? All right. We'll just shut up shop and see what we've got. Oh, shut up, this beastie. See what we've got. All right, now there's just briefly, I want to take us outside for a minute. There's a reason I'm using these colours for flying this livery. It's the closest I could find to the original aircraft I wanted to take up in this part of the world. Right. And away we go. There we go, some little weird Mimo man, quasi forklift golf cart taken off, desperate to run into whatever's up the other end. So here we go. Hopefully we're not going to have too much hassle from the ground vehicles who like to treat the taxiways as arterial roads, as you do. So very IRL, and we'll get her out. Cool. So this is a great little beastie. It's designated simultaneously, I think, both a twin wing, which is an unusual layout as you saw before, and at some point up in the air we'll explore that a bit more, and simultaneously a canard. So it's got kind of unique flight properties, as you can imagine, coming out of the brains of the Rutan brothers. And we're going to fly off, I think it's runway 6. Here in Namur. Really sweet little part of the town. I think this is that on scenery I grabbed. Might well be. Alright, now from memory, it looks like an ornithopter, and from memory the takeoff and landing often behaves like one as well. Ah, lovely. It's a little squirrely to get her up into the air, but really nimble, really agile. Going to bring her down south. So we're flying up today for another one of those trips down memory lane, or tedious trips down memory lane, if you want to reference it that way. But like I said, I do this from a purely selfish perspective. It helps my make-believe factor like you wouldn't believe. I don't think we've got undercarriage on this one. No, just those little rollers underneath there. We'll hop out and have a squid. Actually, we'll do it now. So it looks like a dragonfly, it looks like an ornithopter. You can see it's got those the fixed undercarriage. So obviously light as hell to have that kind of undercarriage. And you'll see us getting bounced around. I think the wind, it doesn't take much gustage to actually get this thing battered about. And it's really quick. So we're just already at what, 2,000? We don't really want to be that high. We actually want to keep it down because we're coming over here. So this is if you look off to our 10 o'clock there, you can see where it's a crossroads. It is an ancient Roman crossroads town, Namur, set in a region called Wallonia, and I'll probably make some nonsense up about all of this as we go. But here at hour 11, this clearing here, it's the amphitheatre, or a large area for the Namur citadel that overlooks the Meuse River that we see stretching off in front of us. And the citadel itself is just imposing. It's the only word I can think of it. You know, it takes on a near literary aspect of like Kafka's The Castle, or you know, it takes on simultaneously august and prestigious tones, as well as sinister tones. Whether any of that is validated or not historically, I don't know what went on in there. If anything, atrocities or blessings or great moments in history or whatever. But as you can see, it's massive. It's utterly massive, the layout, overlooking the entire town. And how do I know this? And I know you're not going to ask, because you guys know better than to ask me crazy questions like this, but you also know that I'm going to tell you. So, one thing, they've even got a lot of the old cobblestone streets around here. And the cobblestone streets still dominate a lot of parts, many cities and towns throughout Belgium and Holland and Germany, obviously, France. But, so here, across the Meuse River, just down here in one of those apartments or buildings down there, I had the privilege of hanging out with a newfound friend for a week. And the weather was not as beautiful as this. So somewhere along there, literally across from the citadel. In fact, it was quite a rainy week in would have been late June. This is going back decades, as usual. So first of all, we want to set off east, and then I'll continue on with the Bollocksy story. So yeah, I've been hitchhiking, and as I always tend to start these incredibly nonsensical stories, I've been hitchhiking, and I slept the night in a bridle track, a horse track, in a forest. It was only sometime later I learned that it was the Ardennes forest, the famous Ardennes forest, Battle of the Bulge, etc., etc. But I got up the next day, hungry, cold, tired, lost. Just the way I used to like feeling in my life. God knows why, but that's how it goes. And as night was coming, it had rained throughout the day, so I looked like a drowned sewer rat. I wended my way into a really quiet bar. Couldn't have had half a dozen people in there. And I didn't know anything about Belgium, to be honest. I didn't know the division between, or the linguistic division between the Dutch, Flanders and Wallonia. But I knew that I really liked it, and some of the people who would give me a lift down out of Brussels and that have been super cool. And anyway, I go into this pub and I'm trying to explain to them, I've got no money, but I will play them some really crappy renditions of songs. if I can score a free beer, or better yet, a free warmed through, you know, scotch and lemonade or something to take the chili out of the bones. So they weren't much impressed, and I did end up playing, you know, House of the Rising Sun or something, and that was a bit of an old standard all around the world. They could relate to it. They forgave me my, you know, bray, twee, nasally voice, and they did line me up with a couple of drinks, which was lovely. So I'm sitting there drinking, and the patron, the cat who owned the bar, said, "Where are you staying?" And I said, I was going to ask if you got a porch or a dry area out the back. I'm quite prepared to keep, as long as it's out of the rain. And they said, "No, nonsense." So we kind of overcame the linguistic barrier. And one of the guys there, Richard, he said, "You can come and hang with me for a few days if you like." He said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm a mechanic by trade." And this is a lifetime ago. I haven't touched a car in 40 years or 35 years or something. So he said, "Funny, I'm a mechanic as well." So we hit it off. We talked all kinds of things. He worked for the place where we're heading. He worked over at Spa-Francorchamps, the famous Grand Prix circuit from the 1920s. Mind you, he didn't work on it from the 1920s. He himself was a young cat like me. But I went and hung out with him for a week or so at his place, and all sinister thoughts. I mean, two strangers hanging together. I wasn't exploitative and he wasn't weird, so it was pretty cool. We're just two decent people, I guess. And I'd learned that he'd only recently lost his wife, so he was on compassionate leave, or I guess what you call grievance leave today. I'm not sure what you call it now. But, you know, he was just, he'd been told to take time off, which is what he was doing, and he built Tamiya kits and Hella kits and Airfix kits. He had all the beautiful Matchbox races, and he was a model maker. You know, that was his therapy to help with his grief. And I just had this unbound respect for this solitary figure. He was a great guy. And day in, day out, he'd take me out to, you know, little restaurants all on the western edge of the Ardennes forest, and quiet little out-of-the-road cafes. And we'd sit and drink pastis with his mates, and, you know, it was kind of really cool. We just, a couple of guys hitting it off. And like I said, I didn't try to abuse the friendship over the course of a week by saying, you know, "Can I borrow money?" or anything like that. No, I'd get up and I'd say, "I might head off today." I'd say, "No, please stay one more day." It was really lovely. It was a good time. But the kindness here, as with so many other people, I like to think I've kind of maintained a modest amount of that to this day. Pay it forward, maybe, for lack of a better, that's an expression that never used to exist, but it's come into its own over the past 20 years. That's a good way to look at it. This is as good a way of looking at it as any. So, Richard, if you're still out there, and his apartment literally looked across the Meuse River, which was rushing wildly. I remember it being, you know, the torrential rains coming down, and that river was just absolutely wild. And throughout the night it was incredibly loud, even with double glazing on his apartment windows, because the building itself would have been 100 years old. And you get up in the morning, you're having a coffee and a cigarette back then, and you're just looking up the world, and there above you on the other side of the river is this huge, imposing, rain-drenched, you know, rain-stained citadel that we just saw. So now we're making our way over to another historically famous part of the world. It's the three towns of Stavelot, or Trois-Ponts in order, Trois-Ponts, Stavelot and Malmedy. And of course, all you cats who know about World War II, you know it for the atrocities committed by Peiper's SS division. And Peiper, it would appear, in his gruesome murder, got his comeuppance many, many years later. Interestingly, he was restricted because of his wartime atrocities. He was called on it, both in Germany and France, so his work range was quite restricted. and he ended up becoming very embittered after the war, and good. I mean, the guy was he was a monster. Ideologies and psychopathy, they so often go hand in hand, but you know, he's a great example. Stavelot is on par with the famous, I think it was Wacky, the brutal, sadistic murders of the civilians in Ardennes, down over in Dordogne. And Stavelot is very similar. Civilians executed needlessly, simply for the sake of sadism. And of course the famous, when they found the tired and tortured bodies of the American troops up at Malmedy as well. So, but yeah, even though Peiper was best friends with Ferdinand Porsche's son, and in fact Ferry was the, I think, architect of the famous 356, the first of the prestigious Porsche line. I think it will be Ferdinand III, Ferry's son, who would create the famous 911, but prior to that it was Ferry himself who designed the 356 and 360 Porsche. But even though he was best mates with Ferry, or you know, Ferry certainly looked out for Peiper in spite of his war criminal background, he couldn't get much more work than a clerk, and ended up moving to France, where ultimately, decades on, he would be murdered. Now there's a raging debate about how poorly he lived after the war, or how impoverished he genuinely was. That tends to be a kind of near mythology with a lot of those people. To all intents and purposes, it looked as though he lived quite well. I think they had a couple of Beamers and BMWs, and even though Beamers are a kind of standard car throughout Western Europe, it still would have cost a pretty penny to buy and run. But that being said, yeah, he did get his comeuppance eventually by a person or persons unknown, and in no uncertain terms. So there you go, there's something gruesome that we haven't introduced in prior videos. Can I just say, and it's, no, I won't say it, I say it every video, but it is cool, isn't it, this thing? It does look pretty cool. So, did we touch upon why I've done these colours? Okay, so the reason we've got these colours is because I originally wanted to fly up, yeah, the wind, even a light wind knocks this puppy around. The reason we're taking this blue and gold, I was hoping to take up the blue and red. The original aircraft I wanted to fly was 1934 Caudron Raphael C430, and the blue and the red were Hélène Boucher. She was a famous racer who flew a number of Caudrons to I think it was Coupe de la Merte, one of the French, Deutsch de la Merte. A kind of, you know, there were many trophies back then. The most famous would be like the Snyder and stuff like that, but there were many trophies. And she was a winner, prestigious winner of a couple of them. And I think the Raphael, the C430, ultimately took her life just southwest of Versailles. A little town called, well, it would have been back then, now it's a suburb, I think, called Guyancourt. Sounds about right. If that's wrong, please leave a comment correcting me as usual. Just let me know. And on that note, please feel free to leave comments. They always help. Is there anything you'd like to see? Would you like me to shut up and just fly? Would you like to... Well, I'm not going to stop. But, you know, is there anything you'd particularly like me to take up and rabbit on about? And anywhere in the world you would like to see? If so, leave a comment. You don't have to like and subscribe. I don't think I'm that kind of... Having made a couple of these now, I think, yeah, I don't know if I'd like to subscribe to these either, frankly. just some old man rabbiting on in a make-believe plane in a make-believe world. But that being said, since I don't do reviews, I do try and maintain some semblance of a fun factor, or even a fun factoid factor. And here we see a bit of the industry. Now, what are they famous for over here, industry-wise? Wallonia, eastern Belgium, is kind of fascinating because Vlog and Welkers, Welsh, they all tie into the word stranger, and or Celt or other. There's variations on a theme there, but this was the southern land. It's a Proto-Germanic or Proto-European Germanic word, which is Welches, I think, which today is which, if I recall rightly, in my crap German. But so Wallonia is an extension. Wales is an extension of that, of course. Welchesland or Welchesland in Switzerland, similar deal. Yeah, it was a kind of interchangeable word that almost invariably meant other. So this greater area of Wallonia, located southwest of Greater Germania, or Germanus. There's another one, Germany, Germanus. Hermano, brother and sister in Spanish. Hermano, Germanus. Well, there you go, there's another one. Linguistic tedium. Now we should be approaching the lakes. I'm looking out for a couple of lakes. One pretty much a horseshoe. I don't want to take it too low in case the valleys, the updrafts and downdrafts knock me for 6. We are pretty much due east, flying low in this southern end of the southwestern end of the Ardennes forest, and all these glorious little hamlets. And the reason I wanted to take up the Coutron originally was because not only the francophonic component of the French Coutron flying up here in what is this, to all intents and purposes, French Belgium, but also why I've just lost my train of thought. It is because, well, first of all, it's great fun to fly, but also I wanted to give some big spiel about how the Coutron, that series, if you look at the lineage of any of you guys who have the Coutron aircraft, and incidentally, if you're experiencing problems of takeoff, which is why I couldn't take it up, kept giving me CTDs, and when I did finally get it off the ground, it would just crash no sooner than get off the runway, off runway 6. So, fair way to clip the speed on this puppy. Here. Yeah, so if any of you cats know why that sucker crashes all the time, I would appreciate a heads up, because it's a great aircraft to battle about. A little bit spicy, a little bit unique. I understand from a review perspective the mirroring of the textures and so on and so forth, but irked a few people, and I think the engine might have been the Stockers 172, even though it's a Renault 4-cylinder inverted air-cooled. But it was a nice flight model, and the paint job on it, I really did love it. I do love it still, and this is the closest. So instead I took up another quirky plane, which is this puppy, the Q200. I can't tell you much about it. It's another Rutan special. As you can see, it bobs about like a kite with a Rotax engine tacked to the front. And I don't think I'm about to get chopped by the wind farm. No, all good. All good. So where are we, clan? I might just use the VFR map to get a bearing. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Okay. Green oil. Oh, there we go. Good. Should be a second one. Ah, man. It's a Zen experience, people. A Zen experience. For anybody who's watching this and, you know, or even enjoys watching these videos or whatever, and you don't have Microsoft Flight Simulator, do yourself a favor, go out and buy it. It's really, really lovely. It's a great way to waste time. Now that'll be Spa-Francorchamps just behind us. We're just going to bring her in. Yeah, bring her in over here. So this is going to be Stavelot, where the, like I said, the historical centre of a lot of heartbreak. And I do believe also Stavelot was a victim of history repeating itself, because and you guys can confirm this for me, but the Schlieffen Plan, or the von Schlieffen Plan, which allowed, you know, the whole Blitzkrieg, the attack through the Ardennes forest originally, at the outset of World War II, was actually just a repeat performance of World War I, the Moltke or von Schlieffen Plan, whatever it was. And, you know, it was an unexpected point on which to barrel your armies through. But they come cascading through here, and in World War I, here in the town of Stavelot, they had the term, they also had what you would consider, or what we would consider today to be war crimes. Because, as with all wars, we know that there is no way we can enforce, there are no niceties with any of it. But that being said, they had the term Kampfführer, you know, the local terror, and that many civilians were executed out of hand in Stavelot and in this region, even in First World War. So long before Peiper and the infamy of his behaviour, his atrocities, his atrocities at the Battle of the Bulge. This had been committed throughout World War I as well. So here, of course, is the city or large town of Normandy, and similar deal, similar historical deal. And now we're going to swing around to the northwest, get ourselves some altitude, follow this beastie in, and I do believe, we shouldn't drop her over so far, not this low. And here we are. So here's Spa-Francorchamps. Coming up. And if you get high enough, you can see the circuit itself. Pretty much sticks out. This is the northern tip of it. Beautifully created. So there's our run down and around to the famous gentle right-hander, coming back round. Actually, yeah, let's cycle around. It's a good one. We've got a clip on. So obviously it's not race day. It's all looking very quiet down there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Alright. Oh yeah, even got the racing arm co-op. Alright, beautiful. And we should... We'll bring it down. This will be Spa Main up here. And Spa-Francorchamps was originally the original circuit from the 20s. I think it ran between Stavelot, Francorchamps and Malmedy. And now of course it's substantially smaller. Roundabout down there, roundabout up here, and I believe we've got an airfield. We can press Sauvignon or something. Coming up on our right. Rock and roll. We'll get it down, and that is our trip down through Wallonia. We'll get this puppy down and we'll take it back into a pattern, bit of an overfly, get a feel for where we're at. Also to lose some bloody speed. God knows we've clipped enough on. Alright, so what else, clan? What else can I bore your brains out with? I have nothing else to reveal. So I am going to focus my prodigious mental energies on bleeding off some speed and getting us safely out of the air and onto the ground. So yeah, this is the Q2 or Q200, and you know, I'm not sure who the maker is. I'll put that in the notes. It is a really super lovely little aircraft to fly about in. The flight properties are unique enough to warrant it as part of the collection. It's a unique little aircraft to fly about. I think even without the FS realistic sounds, the sounds that came with it, or the sound pack that came with it, is pretty good. I will give myself some flaps. As you can see, she really is a little dragonfly. She just literally flips about, and I've really taken the sensitivity off this, off the X56, off the joystick. The other thing is it's real weird for landing because it's so bloody low, and you're basically doing a three-pointer in this creature. I'll introduce some more flaps because that's a hell of speed right there. Keep a bit of throttle on. Scary little creature to bring in. So hopefully it's going to behave itself. Get her across the line. If I can get her across the line at about or take her across the fence around, what do we got? You know what? I can deal with that. Bring her over a bit. There we go. There we go. Come on, kid. Yep. A bit sluggish. Oof. Oof. You know what? Alright, that was fun. That was dumb. That was really dumb. I really should have regulated that more. But that's what you get, Killian. Alright, well, it's kind of fitting. Spa-Francorchamps has enough accidents up that way with the races. Here's another one. My most ignominious moment, clan. Thanks for coming along. I better get the fuel off before I crash and burn in this puppy, eh? Alright, get the pump off. Gang, thank you for joining me on this madcap adventure. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Even with such a humiliating... Let's go out and see the damage, eh? Collapse, collapse, collapse. Oh no, just a prop strike? Oh, you've got to be tripping. Okay. You know what? I'll take that. Alright, big beautiful world. Stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.